Well, it looks like you got some about the Obi Wan series, huh?
Yeah, man. So
Like some news and rumors.
yeah, man. So there's
I'll be honest, man. I don't think I read any of the articles that you sent this time. I might have read the one about the Mandalorian, maybe, but like this one,
yeah.
I know nothing. Enlighten me, O wise wizard.
Certainly. So we have previous rumors about the narrative of the Obi Wan Kenobi series. Was that computers? I think it's being controlled by Skynet. Was that it would be set primarily on Tatooine with our hero looking out for a young Luke Skywalker.
But is this a surprise to anybody, really?
Well, no, that's what the previous thing was. That was the previous thoughts that it was.
I guess I should listen. Sorry, I'll just go ahead and drink my water here.
So there's some evidence suggesting that we go off-world, and that's a seeming casting call was made. Why does my computer keep doing this to me? Was made for an available 8-year-old to play versions of the Skywalker twins, which would imply that we also will go to Alderaan to see a young Leia Organa. While both may still appear, it seems that the new scripts of the series that are done to ensure that we don't feel too much like it's The Mandalorian will focus on a different time period of Obi-Wan's life, or rather 2 distinct periods. So we may not just be in one point in the story. We may bounce around a bit.
That makes sense.
And then I said, according to the Kessel Run transmissions, the show is going to go back and forth between the height of the Clone Wars and at some point near the start of the Dark Times following Order 66 and the formation of the Galactic Empire. For the former time period, Obi-Wan Ewan McGregor will run into the likes of Commander Cody and Anakin Skywalker. All 3 characters will have the attire that they wear on the Clone Wars animated series. For the latter, it is not clear. Let's see. It is not clear if Cody will be appearing, but Darth Vader will. The main narrative of the flashback sequences, if there is one, is not known. Let's see. It's not known, but the main narrative of the present of the series will feature the story of the element of the Empire hunting for Obi-Wan.
Your reading skills are just like incredible today.
Man, it's from teaching all day.
Not reading, apparently.
So how the Empire learns of Obi-Wan's presence remains to be seen, but is likely that he will show that the show will have him go off Tatooine just to justify this narrative. So yeah, that's Obi-Wan. So it sounds like they're going to be bouncing around a bit.
Well, I mean, and it makes sense. I mean, look.
Man, you said that, I remember a long time ago.
Sure.
That he wasn't going to be confined to Tatooine.
He can't be.
You know, it would be some things that are going to pop up and he had to go deal with. And
let me rephrase that. He could be, but I mean, odds are that he wouldn't be, only because of the fact that, you know, if he were, it would be like I know it's going to be a limited series.
Mm-hmm.
I get that. And I mean, I understand that, but at the same time, and look, you could come up with, like, look at this whole first episode of The Mandalorian.
Mm-hmm.
Well, season 2, I should say. I should specify that in case people are watching this in the future. But, you know, that was pretty much entirely on Tatooine.
Mm-hmm.
So you could come up with 8, 10, you know, really cool little adventure type things that you could do, and then, you know, that would forward it.
You got to wonder if Obi-Wan's ever come across one of these crate dragons.
Well, of course he has. Because if you think about it, he was the one that was imitating the crate dragon when he was scaring away the sand people.
That's what that was.
Yeah, that's the whole reason why everybody was really excited about finally seeing one.
Yeah, I never thought about that. Wow.
Yeah. That was the whole idea, and that was the main reason why. I mean, you know, I was really just like, oh man, I can't believe that you know, that this is actually going to finally come forth. You know, because you basically had references to these creatures. Now you get to see one. And that's what was refreshing. So they could have come up with all kinds of stuff.
So, I wonder, was that in the Clone Wars? Remember when they brought that dragon thing and Palpatine? That wasn't a Krayt dragon, was it? Because they wanted it as armor, but it acted a lot like one though.
Yeah, it did. I forgot what that thing was, but it was no, the Krayt dragons are indigenous to Tatooine.
Oh, okay.
Pretty much.
Gotcha.
You know, so I mean, it's like it's just one of the many creatures that are around that it's like, why would anybody live here?
Yeah, I'm out.
You know, I mean,
if I found out that thing,
it also makes you wonder if, you know, because Jakku's another desert planet, basically. It's like, is that thing as brutal as Tatooine? Because Tatooine seems to just, that's like the Amazon of the, you know, the Star Wars universe. I mean,
well,
at least.
Ray did make mention of.
Well, I guess any desert planet. What about Jeddah?
Jeddah, yeah. But see, well, I don't know.
I mean, it's just one of those things that always interests me, that it seems like desert planets are...
Yeah.
It didn't seem like there was that many things that were attacking you on Dagobah. And if anything, Dagobah would be the one where I would just be... As soon as I landed there, I would probably have like this little tiny camp.
Yep.
And I would never go anywhere. Like, it would just be... That would be the only place I would go.
Right.
And can you imagine being by yourself? It's like at night. You're just listening to all this... Wildlife that's out there. I mean...
Well, yeah, the snakes, the lizards, all this stuff.
I can't even imagine, dude. Okay, Ronaldo says, what I hope is that they do not make Obi-Wan and Darth Vader meet again.
Well, that's kind of, you've always often brought this up, is because of their conversation. The conversation that they had in episode 4 that, you know, that one I left you, I was but a learner, but now I'm the master. Was that one?
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, you could take that from episode 3. You know, like when I left you, I was but a learner. Like he was still like newly, you know, he was still like a new Jedi Knight.
Yeah, the only thing that bothers me about all that stuff, I mean, I know it's like stupid to bring stuff like this up, but Anakin never talked like that. When I left you, I was but a learner.
Well, but I brought that up before. So I'm like, when did he? But you actually said. Like,
I know. I defended. I remember defending the point because I remember you were the one that actually brought it up.
Yeah, I brought it up. Like, when did he start talking like this? And you're like, well, you know, he's got a position of power now. He's got a
he's trying to be political. He's all this stuff. You know, who knows? Maybe it's one of those things where, you know, he says something, but his little voice box thing translates it and makes it proper.
Yeah, Palpatine, like, I hate the way this guy talks, but he's effective, so here's how I'm going to fix this.
Exactly. I'm just going to make this, like, box or whatever that interprets whatever he says. I mean, it's, you know, of course, the reality is because Lucas wrote him this way. And But, yeah, I mean, that's how you retcon it, basically, in universe. You say, look, he's got a position of power. He's a little bit different now.
Yeah.
You know, he's not as whiny, thank goodness.
Yeah, he's grown up a lot more.
I mean, there's just like a lot of different things that you can point to that, you know, I mean, look, everybody changes.
True.
To, you know, usually for the better, one would hope. But I mean, hey, there's there's the negative ones too. But these are the kinds of things that I really hope, I honestly hope that they handle well if they're going to bring Vader into it. Because, first of all, to Ronaldo's point, they don't necessarily have to have the meet, even if Vader's in there. Just because Darth Vader may be brought into the series does not necessarily mean he's going to meet up with Obi-Wan.
Mm-hmm.
It is true that it feels like the last time that Obi-Wan and Anakin met was on Mustafar when, you know, they did battle or whatever, and that the episode 4 thing was basically the first time since then. But there is little bits of dialogue clues, though, that could suggest that there was another meetup. And actually, what you're talking about, that was during the duel. Mm-hmm. That's not what actually people point to. People point to when Obi-Wan was talking to Luke and he was basically like, well, he's more machine now than man, and
twisted and evil.
And twisted, you know, and all this other stuff. And it's like, well, how do you even know? Mm-hmm. Because the last time you saw him, he was burned up. And then this guy named Darth Vader came out, and you're all like, you know, oh, a young people of mine named Darth Vader killed him. And it's like, well, you said Vader killed my father. Well, what I said was true from a certain point of view. It was like he actually knew who Darth Vader was.
Well, yeah, but there's an answer for that, though.
What is it?
Episode 3.
Oh, yeah, right. When he's Darth Vader.
No, he's
Well, he saw the knighting of Palpatine.
That's the part I'm talking about. Yeah, when he's like, so he's like,
henceforth you shall now be known as Darth Vader.
Right, and Yoda was just like, the people that you mentor is no longer consumed by Vader. He is now. So it's like, so now you hear this guy walking around as Darth, and then of course it makes sense. I mean, like, all right, I lopped off he already had a bad arm.
Well,
I lopped off his legs. He's already toasted half. I was watching him burn. Now this guy named Darth Vader is a Sith Lord, and then he's walking around like in this giant mechanical suit. I mean, it's kind of there.
There are context clues. I have to admit. Yeah, I mean, there's other things that people point to. I don't quite remember them all. Ronaldo says, I wouldn't be surprised if we see flashbacks of Obi-Wan on other planets. It would be good for a change. How many desert planets have we seen so far? Yeah.
3.
3.
Jakku, Jeddah, and Tatooine.
But then again, I mean, you have to look at it like this. So there's only so many climates that you can fake a planet off of. Because, I mean, let's face it, that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, if you actually look at most planets in space, all they are is either rocks or, gaseous or something like that. So, everybody in the Star Wars universe would be like, oh, look, there's like a snowy region or something. Oh, let's make a whole planet of snow, and let's make a whole planet of forest and a whole planet of swamp. And all you're doing is just taking different climates of Earth and making an entire planet out of it.
Right. Giant cities.
Right.
Cool.
Giant city, lava planet.
Yep.
I mean, it's this kind of a thing that you have to do. So, I mean, there's only so many of these climates you can have. So, if there's like, millions or billions of planets and you're following the thread of Star Wars here.
Oh, Cloud City was awesome. I never would have thought of
Well, but that's not a planet.
I know it's not a planet.
Bespin was the planet, or I think it's a moon, actually. No, there is a planet Bespin, actually. And remember, they featured in that was a Space Whales episode of Rebels, I think.
Oh, because the whole mining colony.
Right, because Bespin is actually a gaseous planet. See, that's, once again, I mean, it
makes sense as air.
You got to follow this stuff. So, I mean, it stands to reason that you're going to have multiples.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, we've had, then there's other planets, too, that are a little weird, like Crate.
Yeah.
Because it had that whole salt thing going.
Yeah.
But, it was kind of a fairly nondescript planet.
Yeah, it's pretty much like
Like, you can't really say it's based on a climate so much as it just has a little bit of a different look. Or, then you had Utapau, which was kind of like a rock planet.
Yeah, that's almost like Colorado or something.
Right. Which I believe
Montana.
Actually Geonosis was kind of the same way.
Yep.
And then of course you had like Mon Calamari is a water planet, as is Camino.
Camino.
Yeah. So I mean, you basically are going to have these different planets that are kind of based on just what we see, climates or conditions or whatever. So I mean, well, yeah, 3 desert planets is a bit much. It makes sense. But then again, look at all the planets that, I mean, in Rogue One, they showed like 10 planets in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah, but Scarif was the coolest, though.
Scarif was actually really cool. That's like the Paradise Beach planet.
Yeah, it's like Hawaii.
The tropical planet, exactly. That's like Hawaii. But, I mean, I don't know about you. Well, I do, because I remember we had the conversation. But for the sake of this podcast... I don't know about you, but that first 5 minutes of Rogue One was the most tiring. Like, I'm sitting there going, like, I don't remember the names of any of these. Like, they're jumping from planet to planet, and I'm like,
whoa.
I'm trying to keep them straight in my head. Like, do I need to remember these to enjoy the movie, or?
Well, the first one where Krennic pops up on the very first one that he finds Galen, it's like that weird, like, black sand beach that they were.
Yeah, it was like some weird. I call it like the charcoal planet or something, like the ash planet.
Yeah, it's like
That planet's kind of ashy. Needs lotion.
But you had that one, and then you had the there's like one that was kind of like a desolate.
Well, then they had that weird, the one where the X-Wings basically attacked. It was where Galen was being kept, and it was kind of like, it was like a rocky planet, but it was at night.
They had a bunch of mountains and stuff.
Yeah, a bunch of mountains, but then it had like all this rain and all this stuff. And
it's like Seattle.
Yeah, pretty much. Seattle if it were rocky. Ronaldo says, I read once that Lucas's original idea for episode 6 was that Yoda had ordered Obi-Wan to tell Luke that Vader killed his father so Luke would kill Vader. Yeah, well, actually, to that point, the original draft of Empire Strikes Back, Vader wasn't Luke's father at all. And actually, Vader did kill Anakin in the original script. And and then, of course, Luke was going to get revenge. So that was being toyed with for a while now. And then, of course, Ronaldo goes on to say, because Yoda knew that if Luke knew that Vader was his father, he would not kill him. I don't know how true it is, but it's interesting. Oh, no, that was all totally true.
Well, I think that was honestly the greater conflict because, and I think I'm glad that Lucas went that route, honestly, because, the other one is typical.
Yeah.
It's a typical thing like, okay, I'm going to get vengeance on, and redeem, my dad or something like that. But it's different when you find out that like, okay, like your dad was once good and now he's bad, but he didn't want, it's like that. The conflict that led him to become the bad guy.
It makes a lot better drama.
Yeah,
it's more intense.
And then now you have to cope with that. It's like, okay, well, it's almost like having a family member who's on drugs. They didn't start off that way. And then all of a sudden, present company exclusive.
Exactly. Dusting the cocaine off of the table real quick.
But no, I mean, so if you have like a family member who's on drugs, but they, if you've known them to not be that way, and then something happened in their life where, this life just happens and they took a downward spiral and that's what happened to them, and you want them to go back to the person that they originally were. So that's kind of like what happened with Vader, and I think more people can identify with that type of story because it's like that's the traumatic part. It's like, can I redeem him? Or can they be redeemed?
Like this. Think about it like this. If Lucas hadn't gone with that, I mean, that is like the biggest reveal in cinematic history. The whole "I am your father" thing. You would have missed out on that, and I mean. That
was like one of the best moves.
And it's because it was so left field. Like nobody would have expected that. Mm-hmm. And, of course, everybody's mind, the first thing you go is like, how do you reproduce? But I mean,
in the suit. Like,
yeah, but then again, a lot of people didn't even know Vader was like a guy in there. A lot of times you kind of thought he was more like an android or something like that. I mean, it was really weird when you really stop and think. Maybe not because... By the time you came into Star Wars, it'd been around for a while and everything like that. But with me, it was sort of like...
Well, see, that's the thing is, for me, I was just like you because I was in the dark because I see everybody else older than me. But, at that time, that was like my grandparents and my uncle who watched it and whatnot. And he's the one who, gave me the movies. But, like, none of my friends had watched it. Like, Star Wars wasn't a thing for us.
Right, and nobody really explained it to
Star Wars
so.
was like probably like 15 years, by the time I got around to watching it. So it's like, all right.
It's kind of how it was with me in Purple Rain. It's like one of my favorite music movies of all time, but yet it came out in like, 84? And I think the first time I finally saw it was like 90 or 91 or something. And everybody, of course, it was the same thing. You haven't seen Purple Rain? I'm like, no.
And they're looking at you like, but you're a musician. Like,
well, and not only that, but like everybody's seen Purple Rain, right? But
right.
Not me. Ronaldo says, I know Obi-Wan is only supposed to be a limited series, but if it succeeds, who knows? I trust Deborah Chow will do a good job.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Deborah
well,
Chow, yeah.
And this is a good point, though, too, because this goes into the whole marketing and profit and the business side of movies versus a more artistic side. I actually think that they will stick to their guns and make it a limited series. Now, that doesn't mean that they wouldn't get pressure from, say, the higher-ups at Disney. to be like, y'all need to think of a season 2. If it's like a smash hit, kind of like The Mandalorian.
Mm-hmm.
But what I think that you have to remember about this whole Star Wars television experience right now is the fact that there are so many different things for which they can make a series.
True.
That if Obi-Wan's a runaway hit, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to make a season 2 of Obi-Wan. It means, hey, we can now make a limited series on somebody else, and it'll probably be successful.
Well, the other thing, too, is you want to see the problem with the Obi-Wan thing is if you try to force something, no pun intended, that's not there, you once again risk losing fans, hardcore fans, to off Star Wars again. Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, if you've already kind of we're still holding on because we got the Mandalorian. Okay, so now if you bring Obi-Wan, we get a limited series, and it's a hit. It makes sense. It was great. We got a little Vader. We got some stuff in there. All right, awesome. It's done. Like, okay, because you can't push it too much because then it's gonna be like, okay, now it's losing. You're losing, or you're gonna start doing stupid stuff to the character that we all love, and now we're gonna be angry again. So it's better to just bail out. It's like, okay, look, we hit the jackpot on this. Walk away from the table, and then and the reason why the Mandalorian works so well is because it's a character in a time period we don't know. You start doing with Obi-Wan, we know him already. We're well aware of him. We're just covering the sliver of time that we didn't get a chance to see. And now once you've covered that, it's like, okay, now you start doing stuff that doesn't fit the character, or now it's doing stuff where it's like, okay, this is getting kind of goofy or silly. Now it's going like, okay, now you've tainted it. And then now it's like, okay, well now... And then, of course, you're still going to want us to go see this movie that you got coming out. And now we're hesitant again because it's like, well, crap, you had Mandalorian, you had Obi-Wan, but then you screwed up Obi-Wan. Now what are you about to do now? So... Well,
here's what they could do, though. And this very easily. Just because, okay, let's just say Obi-Wan's a success. Mm-hmm. They don't have to make a season 2 of Obi-Wan. They could just spin it off. They could take a character, like some breakout character, or even somebody that we already knew, but they just expanded on, and just do a series on them.
And quite frankly, just give us the Cassian Andor series, because we're still waiting on that.
Well, sure. And I mean, but again...
Just make that good.
Well, it's no different than what they're planning on doing, at least that's been the rumor for quite some time, is part of the reason why they're introducing Ahsoka into The Mandalorian.
Yeah, because she's
is a launching point for her own series, and you can do that.
Right.
I mean, as long as it works in the story, you can pretty much... If you're kind of like, okay, look, I really want to base a series on this one character, but I don't know if they really have the strength right now to pull off the series.
All right, Kylo.
It's true. It's like totally verbatim. But another example would be like maybe the character like Ahsoka is popular, but you're not entirely sure it's going to work as an actual series yet. What you do is you put them into either an existing series or as part of something else, and then you gauge, okay, how popular is this, or how much does it work, or whatever, and then you can spin the series off. And they could do that forever, because especially with the way that canon is set up now, even within the movies and things like that, but especially when you take into consideration the comics and the novels and the video games and, all the TV series, movies, if you take canon in its totality, it's all interwoven. Mm-hmm. So it would be very easy that if you focus on one aspect of it in a show, you can spin it off. Yeah. You could do that forever because all this stuff's interwoven anyway.
True.
I would love to see a Dr. Aphra series. And that I could actually, I was trying to think, would I rather that be animated or live action? I would take either or, but for some reason, I'm leaning towards animated on that one. Mm-hmm. If I were going to get that one. But see, there's some series, though, where you would want to see live action.
Right. Yeah, I think Dr. Afro worked better as an animated one too.
Yeah, you know, and I would love to see. Oh man, it's like one of these days.
But I would love to see like a Rogue Squadron one as a live action.
That would be cool as live action.
That's almost like a Top Gun type thing, and I would love to see like how like they're training and how they're preparing.
Oh yeah, I mean, right, because and this gets into the whole genre discussion too.
Yeah.
You know, you can, and honestly, it might actually be worth it for us to do a show based on, hey, what would you like to see as a series or as a movie or whatever? Like all these different storylines out there because they're out there. Inferno Squad would make probably a really good movie.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I mean, it's first you have to decide, well, what do you actually want to make? Because there's a lot of stories out there in the Star Wars universe right now.
Right.
So you have to decide, all right, well, first of all, what do you want to make? Then once you decide what you want to make, from there you have to go, okay, is it animated? Is it TV series? Is it movie?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what are you going to do with it? So I think that's one of the things that Lucasfilm is, I don't really want to use the phrase struggling with it because I don't know if it's necessarily a struggle, but it's definitely a deep consideration. You have to sit there and think about, what do I want to do with this material? And where do I want it to go? And when does it meet? You know, what I would love to see is for them to do almost like what they do in Marvel, where you have a bunch of these standalone movies, series, or whatever, and then they all kind of come together in like an ensemble movie.
Right.
And we talked about this last time, too. A Mandalorian movie would be awesome.
Yeah. I mean, you can tell one big, huge.
Yeah, you could just tell one really big story, but it would be really cool to see those characters on the big screen, I think. Ronaldo says, also, I hope we see Anakin and Obi-Wan in flashbacks from Clone Wars. Well, I think that's
going
to happen because I mean, isn't Hayden Christensen? Isn't that like the worst kept secret in all of Hollywood right now?
They said like all three characters will have the attire that they wore in the Clone Wars animated series.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're getting Commander Cody, you're getting Anakin and Obi-Wan.
Yeah, so I think that what's going to happen is it's going to be like so it's going to be a combination of probably Obi-Wan remembering and reflecting on different things. It's probably going to be triggered by whatever current events are happening at the time. And it's going to be about him because, again, you know, I've said this for years, actually, that I said this even before we had shows. We used to debate this all the time in the studio. I mean, this is basically why this show was invented, is because you and I would sit there and have these like really deep Star Wars conversations about things. And I remember one area that was always a point of contention was that I always wanted an Obi-Wan series, and you're like, it's not necessary.
Yeah.
You know, but I mean, I think that they've shown through some of the comics and things that they released that there really are a lot of stories they could tell. But again, and this is where I totally agree with you, is that if it's like a limited thing or if it was like a movie, like when it was a movie, your whole point was, and I totally agreed with it, where it's like, okay, let it be a movie, but not a trilogy.
Right.
We don't need to see an Obi-Wan trilogy.
No, I mean, because I think once again, like with that character, especially during that period of time, like we know who, you know, if you give me a Obi-Wan story, like, okay, let's say, like Master Apprentice, or you show me like earlier Obi-Wan, like
right, like you'd have to go back.
Now that I could get with,
sure.
But then now you can't use Ewan McGregor anymore though because he's too old.
Exactly, and I should preface this by saying that your comments were limited to the in between 3 and 4.
Right. Yeah, it's like if you're showing stuff between 3 and 4, it's kind of like, all right, I really don't see the point because we kind of know what he's doing. All right, he's just kind of waiting around for Luke to kind of get older, and you know he's just watching to make sure the Empire doesn't, you know, find him or anything.
Right.
Like
we
that.
Don't need, you know, basically adventures in babysitting. You know?
Right. Exactly. You know, like I would much rather you give me I would rather you take that money and energy and put it into a character that we don't know, that you just created, or something that was pivotal around that time. Like I said, now contrary to and it may seem like it's contrary, but like Rogue One, I thought was a good movie because this is a monumental event. Like, you're showing like how they acquired this stuff, and when you actually see the movie, you know, it explains so much about the Empire and everything. Like, you know, the creation of the Death Star. Like, we saw like in Revenge of the Sith, like, okay, we saw what they were building. Oh, they're building the Death Star. Like, okay, we knew that. But then now you're seeing things like, okay, this is the Empire's point where they start taking control over everything. It's like, okay, you know, now you understand when Tarkin says, the last remnants of the Republic has been swept away. Like, because you've seen it. Like, okay, I see.
Well, right. And
it makes sense.
Even before the prequels came out, I mean, that movie made no sense. At least as far as the politics go. When A New Hope came out, you're like, what Senate? What Republic? What do you...
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. You know, it was a lot of things that you had to basically take for granted or whatever. Just go, okay, well, they're part of this whole thing. Like, you didn't really know the details. Right. Actually, that's one of my criticisms. It's another way which Force Awakens essentially mirrors A New Hope. But it's a criticism I have is that you have the New Republic on Hosnian Prime. You have this new government. It's like, okay, well, Leia kind of disagreed with them. So she sort of formed this resistance. They're kind of like the rebels, but they're not rebelling against the government. They're rebelling against, you know, this whole...
First Order.
First Order.
All right.
So it's one of those things where I'm like, okay, that's great and all, but you're just dropping this on us?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, you know, when you're talking about... the politics of everything and the backdrop of everything, how everything happens. See, that's what I loved about the prequels, because you kind of saw like how everything started to transition.
Exactly.
And then now you're seeing that Rogue One, how that thing kind of finally kind of cemented and it kind of connected.
Rogue One is the movie that we actually needed before A New Hope.
Yeah.
And I think that what they should do is they should make another Rogue One style movie, but make it
for the sequel
before Force Awakens.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So Ronaldo says, Lucasfilm has a lot of material to make many animated movies. Just look how DC Comics had so much success with their animated material. It's a formula that works. Yeah, that's basically what I'm talking about. I would love to see a bunch of animated feature-length movies.
Yeah, no, those would be sweet. Because I just watched an animated movie that I never knew that I needed to see, but it was like amazing to me. And you know how much of a Batman fan I am, so it was, you know, Batman meets the Ninja Turtles. I know it sounds crazy. Hey
man, I mean, when you know what, like, the Batman episodes of the Scooby-Doo movies or whatever, some of my favorite ones.
But like when you finally like watch it, you're kind of like, okay, wow, this is actually like Shredder and Batman actually get into this whole like duel in this, like, that's what I'm talking about. Like, you want to talk about good fighting? That was sweet. Batman's Hush, where like the Riddler kind of became this new character called Hush. Man, amazing. You know, but the way they tell the story is like you're really getting into like the personal lives of these characters. And so yeah, like I said, I think with Dr. Aphra and, you know, different things like that, like Rogue Squadron, I think that would be a really good series if you want to do live action. You could really do something with that. So there's a lot of different things that I think that will work well with the Star Wars mainframe, I guess. You know.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. And by the way, if you guys are hearing this, the warehouse heater is finally, I think, kicked in, even though I turned it down. It's so it's kind of loud. That's the sound that you guys are hearing in the background. So I just thought I'd point that out. But yeah, I mean, these are the kinds of things that I think that they should start to focus on. Is that they can go into a bunch of different directions, still have a common thread, but you can cover quite a bit of not only the lore and all this other stuff, but you can actually, basically the marketing of the fan base, people want to see stuff like this. Oh, Ronaldo agrees that Batman versus Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movie was awesome.
Yeah, man. See? It was sweet, man.
What was it? Was it on Netflix or something?
It's
or Prime or what?
Prime. Was it on Prime? It might have been Prime. But like there was two of them. There's the Batman versus the Ninja Turtles one, which was pretty cool. There's Hush that I watched. That was awesome. And yeah, I think, and that Hush one was like really, because it really got into like this whole romance between Batman and Catwoman, and you really kind of saw how their whole relationship developed when they revealed themselves to each other finally, and it was like, wow.
See, that would be cool.
It was very adultish, but I'm just like
I like the whole Killing Joke movie. I remember you and I saw that in the theater, but that whole Batman Batgirl thing was kind of creepy, man.
Oh yeah.
Like that was just, I don't know, there was just something not right about that whole stuff, like all those scenes.
Well, yeah, I mean, I could understand. Well, see, the cool thing about it is, it was weird because it's weird for me to watch it only because Batgirl and Robin actually dated,
right? And that's what I'm saying.
But then when she became Oracle, though, it's like she was older, but
yeah, but I mean, still,
but Batman is still.
It goes against the lore. At no point. I mean, there may have been some, comic series, some Batman comic series where maybe they did hook up. I don't know.
See, Boat Ride will probably love this.
Yeah, right? Well, he might still be there. I know he joined us. But yeah, I mean, exactly. These are the kinds of things that I think that they need to be careful. And this could easily permeate through the Star Wars universe, too, where they start doing these, like, weird matchups or things like that.
Right, you don't want to have the Ninja Turtles in Star Wars.
Well, here's the thing, though. Now, this is funny. Now, this is a novel. This was not a movie or a cartoon or anything like that. This is a novel, but it was one of the coolest. I was reading all the Star Trek and Star Trek: The Next Generation books.
I remember you told me
about this. And they had
a
crossover novel. You could still get this, by the way. It's not out of print.
I remember you told me about this.
It's a little harder to find, but it's not out of print.
Yeah.
But they actually had a Star Trek: The Next Generation crossover with the X-Men.
Yeah.
And it was weird, of course, because in my mind, right, the movies have been released by then.
So you got Picard.
I'm thinking Picard and Professor X, and they're kind of the same people, and I'm like, my mind's exploding at that point. And Wolverine, talks to Worf, and,
they relate to each other.
Yeah, they relate to each other. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was really sort of funny to me.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. But what about you guys? You guys are hearing all these things about the Obi Wan series and some of the news and rumors that we've covered. What are you guys' thoughts on this? I'm going to leave it real general. I'm not going to ask anything specific on that because you can go anywhere with this, right? So what do you guys think? Are you looking forward to it? Do you think it's a waste of time? Do you plan on watching it? Or are you going to pass on this one? Or are you just going to be like, yeah, just wait for the Cassian Andor series? Let us know either now in the chat section while we're live, or you can let us know in the comment section. And while you're doing that, make sure you hit that subscribe button so we can keep bringing you more shows like this. And make sure you hit the like button because that helps out the channel quite a bit.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.